school is just one place we can learn,
Yeah.
but in every interaction, in every situation, there's an opportunity to learn because we're not on this planet just to learn math and chemistry. We're
Right.
here to learn compassion. We're here to learn empathy. We're here to learn forgiveness. We're here to learn how to be kind. And those lessons are found everywhere.
You talk about this Navy SEAL, kind of, fire hose childhood experience where you were forced to, build some resilience and, bullying and, being a kid that, wasn't, speaking the language or having to learn to speak the language. And just, yeah, you're in Cincinnati, Ohio. Um, it can the Midwest or Ohio certainly maybe at those times and just being a kid it can be really tough and I'm just
Extremely.
yeah and
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious especially as we start to talk about the work that you're doing today emotional wellness and the things that you're passionate about if you could just maybe speak to like how hard that was and how it did kind of land inside of you and affect you at that time.
You know the story of Batman?
Mhm.
I mean, my
Mhm.
parents weren't murdered, but
Mhm.
it might as well have been. Like as a child, like it felt like I was murdered,
Mhm.
as a human being. So I was able to turn that energy into something positive.
Mhm.
That's what it felt like. I was
Mhm.
scrawny. I didn't speak the language. I didn't look like anybody else.
Mhm.
I was the last kid picked for everything.
Mhm.
And so that gave me all the fuel I needed for the rest of the journey.
Mhm. And it's something just sort of innate in you, or what do you attribute the kind of mindset shift to be able to say like, well, I'm just gonna go out and be Batman, where somebody else might have I don't know, turn to, acting out or drugs or, depression or something else, you used it as fuel is what it sounds like.
Yeah, it's probably my grandmother. She was
Mhm.
deeply religious, would wake up and pray a couple hours every morning. And so I spent years 4 to 7 with her. My
Mhm.
parents had already come to the US, but they
Mhm.
couldn't afford to have me in the States.
Mhm.
So I think her influence is very heavy in my life, and having a lot of church in my life, I think, kept me on the straight path for the most
Mhm.
part. And
Yeah.
also my parents. I mean, my parents. I think my dad put the fear of God in me if I was ever going to do anything naughty.
Yeah.
So it was not an option if I wanted to stay alive to go sideways.
Mhm. Yeah. And talk a little bit more about either church and or what you started to talk about where you were encouraged to go to medical school or to be a doctor but you were learning a lot outside of the classroom. It seems like that seems to be really impactful to you, whether it be the church or the leadership lessons. You seem to be getting a lot of information, experience, knowledge, passion around what you were learning outside of the classroom.
You know, School is just one place we can learn,
Yeah.
but in every interaction, in every situation, there's an opportunity to learn because we're not on this planet just to learn math and chemistry. We're
Right.
here to learn compassion. We're here to learn empathy. We're here to learn forgiveness. We're here to learn how to be kind. And those lessons are found everywhere.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
in the church, we talked about that a lot, right? The fruits of the spirit, right? We talked
Mm.
about, love is kind, love is patient, so on and so forth.
Mhm.
So I was really blessed to have that underpinning, even though I
Mhm.
may not agree with everything that the church teaches. But I took a lot of beautiful lessons from my time there and my involvement there, because I
Mhm.
probably spent more time, researching and preparing for my next. I was giving I was talking in front of congregations as a high school kid. I was preparing the whole set list for worship. I was doing it all, and I
Mhm.
probably had way more passion in that than I did in all my other stuff.
Mhm.
So I was in it. And then, in terms of the med school thing, that was mostly driven by my dad worked at General Electric under Jack Welch, and there was a constant threat of being laid off.
Mhm.
And as an immigrant family, we didn't have a backup plan. If you got laid off, like who's going to pay the mortgage? And so that anxiety, that stress, was persistent, and it turned into a lot of arguments between my parents, myself, and that's why they really pushed me to be a doctor, because they thought, well, at least if you're a doctor, you'll never have to worry about a recession. People always get sick. That was a huge driver. And of course, it's very noble and it's a great, profession. But that was a huge driver. And I love the idea of helping people. I actually went to med school for 3 weeks, and then I realized like that wasn't my path. There are many ways to help people.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm maybe jumping around a little bit, but I just am uh, curious. When you think about parents, and I think about this a lot. Having kids that are contemplating their careers. Your parents, and hearing that experience, it sounds to me like the intentions are so good, right? They're like, I touched this hot stove, or I had this experience, and I want my kids to have something else better, right? And so we love our kids. We think that we're giving them what it is that they need, based on our own lives. But in fact, it's different for each kid, right? And it's not a straight line. And just because something happened in the past doesn't mean it's going to happen in the future. I'm wondering what you're going to tell these kids, if there's,
Everybody has their own journey, right? I mean,
yeah.
one of my favorite quotes is Tony Robbins. He has a son who's very chill and laid back. And he said, and he tried for his whole life to get his son to be like him, right? Fired up, like, motivated, like, and one day finally he had a light bulb going. He's like, and then I think Jake, and he's like, I think Jake is in my life to teach me how to chill and just
That's
relax
great.
and
Yeah.
kick back and enjoy life, And
Yeah.
so I think if you ever watch the movie Soul, that movie?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And it's such a powerful, profound movie. That's a cartoon, right?
Hmm.
But it talks about how different souls have different journeys.
Yeah.
And so, we have to recognize that just because it's my journey to be this crazy, whatever, it doesn't mean it's the right fit for every other person that's going to be in that stadium.
Yeah. That was a pretty good Tony Robbins impression, by the way.
I love that guy. He's awesome.
Yeah, I did too. But yeah, that's a great story. So tell me then, I mean, obviously you've got some pretty impressive credentials on your resume, and I know that it's not, you know, your focus. You're focused on what you're doing today, and yet, give us a little bit of color on Harvard Business School and Pepsi and Facebook. I mean, you do kind of go down this path of um, sort of high accolade, high credential, high performing, pretty rocket ship environments. Maybe say what you want about that.
So I think there are two themes that run throughout the kind of the first half of my career. I think there's going to be like three chapters. The first chapter was all about financial freedom and accumulating skills. And my ex-girlfriend, who I'm still dear friends with, she always said, life is like Zelda. And I've never actually even played Zelda, but she was like, you just go through different parts and you just pick up keys and skills that you need later to unlock things and do things, right? And I think Steve Jobs mentions that too. Like you pick up things along the way that you don't realize is going to help you down the road, right? So, McKinsey was great because I wanted to get more Navy SEALs training, right? They say it's the Navy SEALs of business. And I had to drop into a new situation that I knew nothing about. And within 1 or 2 weeks, become an expert. Within 4 weeks, make a presentation to the CEO about what's wrong with his company or her company,
Mm-hmm.
right? That skill set is so powerful to be able to quickly go in, have the confidence to just learn and be able to have an impact very quickly. Then Harvard Business School was because I had read The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People when I was in high school. And I actually ended up teaching that at Ohio State. When I was a senior, I presented that to 500 juniors. I just love that book. And Stephen Covey had gone to Harvard Business School.
Mm-hmm.
So that planted a seed that I also wanted to go to Harvard Business School. So there, it was an incredible experience. I was a co-president of the marketing club. Just networked with amazing CEOs. We had the who's who coming through. Traveled around the world with my classmates. Then I got recruited to PepsiCo. They needed someone who understood digital because the world was shifting from TV advertising to digital. And my then boss was also HBS grad, 12 years ahead of me. And I went there. China was the second largest market for PepsiCo after the United States, right? 1.5 billion people. So I went and I was in the room with mostly people 10 plus years older than me, as my peers. And I learned a ton. And part of my calculation there was I wanted to learn entertainment marketing. If I can learn how to make a soda water that's dark and bubbly cool, then I can make anything cool, right? Look at these bracelets. They're just
Mhm.
bracelets, but I've built a brand around it. So I
Mhm.
wanted to learn brand building, and I consider Richard Lee, which is my boss there, one of the best brand builders ever.
Mhm.
And so I went there for a year and a half, learned that skill set. He had a retreat, December of 2007, where he was in 2006. He was inspiring all of us to dare for more, be our best, etc. Lots of Steve Jobs quotes, etc. And that December and January, I just sat back and I was like, well, I'm 29. And actually at 22, I had set a goal to be financially independent by 30. So I'm on the cusp of 30, making 200K a year, which back then was like making half a million, 700, K a year. It's a lot of money, but I was nowhere near going to be retired, like financially free. So I just pulled the ripcord and I resigned and I decided I want to go start a company that would impact people. And I also felt a little guilty about selling sugar water because I didn't think that was necessarily the best thing that, to get kids to drink more sugar water. So I tried to do a few different startups in China, but I'm not local, not native. And I thought it was going to be really, really difficult for me to be an expat and build a startup in China. So then I started thinking about what other companies I can go to. And I was going through a really hard kind of a depression because I was like, wow, like this is now all of a sudden really hard. But I had this intuition that Facebook was going to be massive. And I knew there's only two ways to get financial independence in a short amount of time. One was tech, and one was finance, right? Run a hedge fund, private equity. And I was way more passionate about tech. And I loved Facebook. And I had actually met Mark Zuckerberg in 2004 when he was just starting Facebook, right? So then I reached out to Zuck. I reached out to a few other people I knew that were working there, and they didn't have an opportunity for me. But I kept literally every day, I'd wake up and I would look at the news for Facebook. And I saw that this guy named Chamath Palihapitiya had been hired as the VP of product marketing. And that day I found his email from his VC firm, chamath at mayfield.com. And I emailed him that day a quick 2 paragraph blurb of here's who I am, here's how I can help you. Next morning, I get up and there's an email back from him saying, hey, send me your thoughts in a PowerPoint and let's talk. So for the next 2 weeks, I spent every waking moment racking my brain trying to figure out how I'm going to impress this guy to get my shot at my dream. And so I did the presentation. He loved it, flew me out, and I joined Facebook. And that was 4 years on a rocket ship. I joined
Mhm.
when there was 50 million users. I left, there was half a billion. I think of it as my time with the Chicago Bulls when Jordan was there.
Mhm.
Like
Yeah.
I got to be a water boy, watching that dynasty get built. And it was life changing because
Mm.
by the time I was 35, the equity I was given had 100x,
Mhm.
and I was finally financially free. I
Yeah.
no longer had to worry about a paycheck.